Hey gaming fans, so today I got another Yu-Gi-Oh deck profile, and this one is vampires. And I know vampires can be done a few different ways, but this one I decided to focus on the field spell Vampire Kingdom. So the build's going to really be revolving around pulling off that effect. So for the first card, this is Vampire Familiar. Now I would probably play more than one if I had more than one, but I mean if you have more than one, probably play it. But this is really cool. If this card is special summoned, you could pay 500 life points to add a vampire monster from your deck to your hand, except himself or a copy of himself. If this card is in your graveyard, you could send one vampire card from your hand or face up on the field to special summon this card, but then you banish it. So really good, really helps out with your vampire, especially with the tribute monster ones. You know, really cool card. I mean, not much for the attack, 500, but that's not what you use them for. Then the next one, which is also a pretty decent vampire, something you would want to open with first turn. If this card is in your possession and sent to the graveyard by your opponent's card, either by battle or card effect, which is cool. I like how they started to do that in the later on cards where they're not just destroyed by battle like Mystic Tomato. You can add a dark vampire monster from your or vampire spell or trap from your deck to your hand. Also, you can banish this card from your graveyard and pretty much just normal summon a dark vampire without tributing. So really good because there's a lot of tribute monsters in this deck. The next one's an odd choice, but it's part of the the whole combos of the deck. And that's Vampire Lady. She's 1550, and each time this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent's life points, you declare one card, monster, spell, or trap. Your opponent selects one card of that type from the deck and sends it to the graveyard. And so the reason why I'm playing that is it's another way to get off your Vampire Kingdom, especially if your opponent doesn't have much to stop its attack, or doesn't have a big enough monster that this can, stop. Then I got Mizuki. Two Mizukis. Another good card when it's in the graveyard. I mean, it's a 1700 beat stick, but it's mainly there just to special summon your vampires from the graveyard. And then I throw in 3 cards to help send cards to the graveyard. So the one copy of Dark Grepher, because you're only allowed one in a deck. Again, with Armageddon Knight, you only allow one in the deck. Basically what they do is they just send a dark monster from your deck to the graveyard, but that's where you want your cards in this deck, is in the graveyard. And then Mathematician, same idea as Armageddon Knight, except it's only a level 4 and it doesn't have to be a dark, but that doesn't really matter. Well, actually it does matter because it can actually send your Mizuki, so it can work. So now on to the tribute monsters, or the ones you want to special summon. So I play 3 Vampire Dukes. So when this card is normal summoned, you can target one dark vampire monster in your graveyard, special summon that target, and face up defense position. So really good. I mean, you can pull out another Duke or any of the other vampires that you play in the deck that are in the graveyard. And then when this card is special summoned, you could declare one card, spell, trap, or monster, and they send that card from their deck to the graveyard. Again, another way to pull off your Vampire Kingdom. And so the best play, obviously, is if you have a Duke in the graveyard, you can normal summon the Duke, and then special summon this Duke, and then pull off his effect. And then you can go into an Xyz play if you want to. The next one is another level 5, and that's Shadow Vampire. When this card is normal summon, you could special summon one dark vampire monster from your hand or deck. So again, you'd probably want to go for your Duke. And except for Shadow Vampire, but I only play one anyways. And if you do, that monster can only attack for the rest of his turn. And you cannot it cannot be used for an XYZ for a summon of an XYZ material unless it's dark, but that's fine. I mean, there is dark XYZ materials in the extra deck anyways. So then I got a level 6, and that's Vampire Grace. Another one that sets off the Vampire Kingdom's effect, but this also has a revival effect. When a level 5 or higher zombie type monster is special summoned to your side of the field by the effect of a zombie type monster, so like Vampire Duke for instance, while this card's in your graveyard, you could pay 2,000 life points and special summon this card. So she gets herself out of the graveyard. You can only use the effect of Vampire Grace once per turn, and then once per turn you could declare one card type, monster, spell, or trap, and your opponent sends that type from their deck to the graveyard. Again, more for Vampire Kingdom. Then I threw in a Vampire Scourge, just one. It's also a level 6, so the Grace and the Scourge can actually go into a rank 6 if you really want to. If this card is normal or special summon, you could pay 1,000 life points and target one vampire monster in your graveyard, except Vampire Scarlet Scourge, and special summon it, but it cannot attack this turn. So another way to get Duke back onto the field to use its effect. And then once per turn, at the end of the battle phase, is this card destroyed any monsters by battle, you can special summon them from the grave to your field. So, you know, okay, it can work. And then for the last one, it's really just more like a generic zombie support, and that's Jack O'Bolin. You could discard one zombie monster, special summon this card from your hand. During your opponent's main phase, quick effect, you can target one zombie monster in either player's graveyard, special summon that monster, but banish it when it leaves the field, then banish this face-up card until the end phase. So, you know, it can work in a, you know, the fact that it's a quick effect on your opponent's turn. And again, if you got your Vampire Kingdom out, you can pull out your Duke to stop their plays. So that's the monsters. Let's get into the spells. So we got quite a few spells in this deck. So the first obvious one is going to be Vampire Kingdom. So this is what the whole deck is pretty much based on. So zombie type monsters gain 500 attack during the damage calculation only. I don't know why they bothered with that. They should have just gave all vampires 500 attack, but whatever. Once per turn, when a card is sent from your opponent's deck to the graveyard, target one card on the field and send one dark vampire monster from your hand or deck to the graveyard, and if you do, destroy that card. So that's where the whole sending from the deck to the graveyard comes in handy. Then to round out this combo, I put in 3 Gravekeeper Servant. So each time your opponent attacks with a monster, the opponent must send one card from the top of their deck to the graveyard. So when they attack, if you got your Vampire Kingdom out, they send the top card of their deck to the graveyard. Then you could trigger the Kingdom effect, send a dark vampire from your deck to the graveyard, and destroy their monster. So pretty fun. Then I threw in a Foolish Burial because you want to get the vampires into the graveyard as fast as possible, or your Mizukis. 2 Vampire's Desire, same idea. You get to activate one of these effects, target one face-up monster you control, send one vampire monster from your deck to the graveyard with a different level than that monster, and if you do, the targeted monster becomes the level that of the sent monster in the graveyard to the end of turn. So it's got a level modularizing, you know, changing, or whatever you want to say, but it's, you know, mostly to get the vampire into the graveyard. Or you can target one vampire monster in your graveyard and send one monster you control to the graveyard, and if you do, special summon the targeted monster. So another way to get out your Duke. I put in one Call of the Mummy. I don't know, I've always kind of been iffy about this card, but in testing, it seems like it every time I drew it, like was able to draw it, it kind of came in handy. So because this deck has a habit of having a lot of big monsters in your hand and no way to get them onto the field. So to just have at least one card that can help you special summon. And basically, if there's no monster on your side of the field, you can special summon one zombie from your hand. So it doesn't matter how big it is, you can just special summon it. Instant Fusion, because there's a lot of good targets for this card. And another way to help get your big vampires out. And then the classic Monster Reborn, because we always want to reborn stuff. And 2 Book of Life, which is sort of like a Monster Reborn. You target a zombie in your graveyard, and one monster in your opponent's graveyard, special summon the first target and banish the second. So hopefully through your effects of sending stuff to the graveyard, you'll be able to activate this card. Because one of the problems this card is early on, if your opponent doesn't have any monsters in their graveyard, you can't use it. So they have to have at least one monster to banish. So hopefully you'll actually mill some monsters out of their deck before that happens. So that's the spells. Now let's get on to the traps. So again, the focus of this deck is the Vampire Kingdom. So I play 2 Vampire Takeover. If you have no card in your field zone, and all face-up monsters you control are zombie type, activate 1 Vampire Kingdom directly from your deck. Then you can special summon 1 dark vampire monster from your graveyard in face-up defense position. So this is actually pretty cool because you get to actually pull out your kingdom to the field automatically. And then if you had a Duke in your graveyard, you can special summon the Duke, activate the Kingdom effect, and then destroy one card they control. So really good card. I like how it just pulls it right onto the field. It doesn't just add it to your hand. Kind of like Metaverse, I think, does that, or one of the traps like that. So that's the Vampire Takeover. Then I got 2 Simultaneous Loss. This is an interesting card. All it does is each player sends the top card of their deck to the graveyard. So once you get your Vampire Kingdom out, you know, on your opponent's turn, say they summon a monster, you could activate this. Then we both have to send a card from our decks to the graveyard, which then triggers your Kingdom, which then you could send a monster, a vampire monster from your deck to the graveyard to destroy the card they just summoned to the field. Or set a card or whatever you want to do. And for more revival, I put in 2 Call of the Haunteds, because there's going to be a lot of monsters in the graveyard at some point. Plus, again, if you have your Kingdom out, you might want to revive your Duke or something like that and destroy a card. And then the final 2 traps, Vampire Domination, which is kind of like your Solemn Judgment of the deck. When a spell or trap card or monster effect is activated while you control a vampire, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Then if it was a monster, gain life points equal to its original attack. So that's really cool, because there is some cards in this deck that do use life points. So you might want to recover some of those at the same time as stopping a monster or spell. And for the extra deck, I got 2 Vampire Suckers. These are pretty cool, actually. You just any 2 zombie monsters just to link summon this one, and then if you would tribute a monster for a tribute summon, you could tribute a zombie monster your opponent controls, even though you do not control them. You know, that could come in handy. You can only use the effect of Vampire Sucker once per turn. I don't play anything to turn your opponent's monsters really into zombies. I think there might be like 1 card or something, but then you could target 1 monster in your opponent's graveyard, special summon it to your opponent's field in defense position, but it becomes a zombie. So that's where that main effect comes from. You get to summon one of their cards from their graveyard, and then it becomes a zombie. And then for the second effect is if a zombie would be special summoned from the graveyard, you draw a card. So really cool to pull out their zombie from the graveyard. Then you contribute that zombie, you get to draw a card, then you contribute that zombie to summon one of your zombies. So really cool. I threw in a Borreload Dragon just because it's the biggest link monster I have. If you have better ones, go ahead, throw them in there. Then for the instant fusion, I put in Thousand Eyes Restrict, because it's just a good card to pull out if you need to get rid of a troublesome monster on your opponent's side of the field. I threw in a Darkfire Dragon only because it's a level 4 instant fusion target that I can rank up into a rank 4. And Reaper of the Nightmare, which is a zombie, kind of like Spirit Reaper, can't be destroyed by battle, and it can attack directly, and it discards a card out of your opponent's hand. But more importantly, it's a level 5 zombie, so really works well if you need to Xyz play. And even if you just need to special summon this guy and sit on him as a defender, you know, pretty good wall. And that's it for those guys, and then let's get into the Xyz. So, yeah, you can go into rank 4s, so I put in Abyss Dweller, Daigusto Emerald, 101 Shark. These are just, you know, my favorites to use for XYZ stuff. And I threw in a few rank 5s. So we got Volcasaurus and Adrius. So Volcasaurus destroys a monster, and then you inflict damage equal to its power, its attack. And then this guy is once per turn, you could destroy 1 card your opponent controls face up. You just have to detach. Then I also have a Crimson Knight Vampire Braum. He's okay. He pretty much revives himself. You can also detach a material from this to target 1 monster your opponent controls in the graveyard and special summon it to your side of the field. And the only monster that can attack that turn is this card. But then if this card's destroyed, and then during your standby phase, you can special summon this guy. So he kind of keeps coming back. Really annoying kind of a card. And then because you can go into rank 6, I threw in some like Photon Strike Bouncer, and this vampire guy. He's okay. He doesn't really fit the theme too well of this deck, but just a thought, like if you wanted to throw in a vampire. But yeah, that's it. That's the deck. So you can see like this really does focus on pulling off the Vampire Kingdom effect. So yeah, anyways, let me know what you think. Throw some comments down below. Throw some suggestions. I'm always welcome to suggestions if you think that there's certain cards I'm missing or should have. Always like to hear them. Anyways, hope you liked the video. Hope you subscribe. Talk to you later.